Dearest, gentle listeners, you are listening to the Ladies Bridgerton, the talk of the ton. We are your effervescent hosts, your neighbourhood-friendly Kiwi, Taj from Middle-earth, New Zealand.
And Patty, Regency romance enthusiast, whose current chapter of her story takes place in Ohio.
Settle down onto your favourite settee as we delve into the lives of the elite and illustrious ladies, lords, and royalty of the ton. This Bridgerton podcast is two friends talking romance, symbolism, Easter eggs, and deep diving into the connections of our favourite characters. This podcast covers both book and TV series and therefore will contain spoilers.
Today, Polin fans, we are finally going to talk some spicy stuff. The sunflower is asking her bee to land his lips on hers. There is so much to discuss, and this is a pivotal Polin moment. Some believe he realized his feelings. Some believe he felt them for the first time right here. We have our own feelings on the subject.
We are here to tell you you're wrong. No.
You're wrong. We're right. No, everybody, I think they filmed it specifically so that everybody could have their idea. And it worked. So they didn't want to take a stance. They're like Aaron Burr Hamilton fans. They went the Aaron Burr route where they just didn't stand up for anything.
I'm going the Eloise route where I have my beliefs and I cannot understand how anyone cannot possibly believe the things the way that I do.
Believe the same way. Exactly.
Yep. Right there with you, Eloise. You tell them. You tell them how it is. In today's episode, we will be doing something different. We will be starting out by doing a reading of Chapter 9 of Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, as the kiss scene is so similar to how it plays out in the TV series that we wanted to dive into it. As with our Season 4 episode, I will put timestamps in for when this reading ends so that you can skip past it if you do not wish for book spoilers. Now we must make haste into today's episode. If you do not wish to listen to our read-through of the first kiss scene from Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, please skip to 14 minutes and 10 seconds so that you can continue on today's episode. Patty, take it away.
Okay, so lead in. Colin has come to the Featherington house to talk to Penelope because he thinks Eloise is Lady Whistledown. And Penelope is telling him absolutely not. She's not Lady Whistledown. And he goes, you know what? It doesn't even matter if she is or she isn't. Because if people believe she is and it gets out that she is, that's enough to ruin her. So starting with the book, even if Eloise isn't Lady Whistledown, and mind you, I still think she is, it doesn't matter. Because if I suspect that she's Lady Whistledown, then surely someone else will as well. Your point being? Colin realized that his arms were reaching forward, and he stopped himself before he reached out to shake her shoulders. It doesn't matter. Don't you see? If someone points his finger at her, she'll be ruined. But not, Penelope said, appearing to require a great deal of effort to unclench her teeth. If she's not Lady Whistledown, how could she prove it? Colin returned, jumping to his feet. Once a rumor is started, the damage is done. It develops a life of its own. Colin, you ceased to make sense 5 minutes ago. No, hear me out. He whirled to face her, and he was seized by a feeling of such intensity that he couldn't have ripped his eyes from her if the house were falling down around them. Suppose I told everyone that I had seduced you. Penelope grew very, very still. You would be ruined forever, he continued, crouching down near the edge of the sofa so that they were more on the same level. It wouldn't matter that we had never kissed. That, my dear Penelope, is the power of the word. She looked oddly frozen, and at the same time flushed. I don't know what to say, she stammered. And then the most bizarre thing happened. He realized that he didn't know what to say either, because he'd forgotten about rumor and the power of the word and all of that rot. And the only thing he could think of was the part about the kissing. And, good God in heaven, he wanted to kiss Penelope Featherington. He might as well have said he wanted to kiss his sister, except stole a glance at her. She looked uncommonly fetching, and he wondered how he hadn't noticed that earlier this afternoon. She wasn't his sister. She definitely wasn't his sister. Colin? His name was a mere whisper on her lips. Her eyes were quite adorably blinking and befuddled. And how was it he'd never noticed what an intriguing shade of brown, almost gold, near the pupil? He'd never seen anything like it. And yet, It wasn't as if he hadn't seen her 100 times before. He stood, suddenly, drunkenly. Best if they weren't quite on the same latitude. Harder to see her eyes from up here. She stood too. Colin, she asked, her voice barely audible. Could I ask you a favor? Call it male intuition, call it insanity, but a very insistent voice inside of him was screaming that whatever she wanted had to be a very bad idea. He was, however, an idiot. He had to be, because he felt his lips part, and then he heard a voice that sounded an awful like his own say. Her lips puckered, and for a moment he thought she was trying to kiss him, but then he realized that she was just bringing them together to form a word. Word. Nothing but a word beginning with W. W always looked like a kiss. Would you kiss his life as he knew it? What? He asked, aware that she was blinking rapidly. Her face turned a deeper shade of crimson that he'd thought humanly possible, and she turned away. Never mind, forget us. Colin thought that was a very good idea. But then, just when he'd thought that his world might resume its normal course, or at least that's what he'd been able to pretend it had, she whirled back around, her eyes alight with a passionate fire that astonished. No, I'm not going to forget it, she cried out. I've spent my life forgetting things, not saying them, never telling anyone what I really want. Colin tried to say something, but it was clear to him that his throat had begun to close. Any minute now, he'd be dead. He was. It won't mean a thing, she said. I promise you, it won't mean anything. And I'd never expect anything from you because of it. But I could die tomorrow. And what? Her eyes looked huge and meltingly dark and pleading, and he could feel his resolve melting away. I'm 8 and 20, she said, her voice soft and sad. I'm an old maid, and I've never been kissed. Got. Got. He knew how to speak. He was fairly certain he'd been perfectly articulate just minutes earlier, but now he didn't seem able to form a word. And Penelope kept talking, her cheeks delightfully pink and her lips moving so quickly that he couldn't help but wonder what they'd feel like on his skin, on his neck, on his. I'm going to be an old maid at 9 and 20, she said, and I'll be an old maid at 30. I could die tomorrow, and you're not going to die tomorrow, he somehow managed to get out. But I could, and it would kill me because be dead, he said, thinking his voice sounded rather strange and disembodied. I don't want to die without ever having been kissed, he finally. Colin could think of 100 reasons why kissing Penelope Featherington was a very bad idea. The number one being that he actually wanted to kiss her. He opened his mouth, hoping that a sound would emerge and that it might actually be intelligible speech. But there was nothing, just the sound of breath on his lips. And then Penelope did the one thing that could break his resolve in an instant. She looked up at him deeply into his eyes and uttered a simple word. He was lost. There was something heartbreaking in the way she was gazing at him, as if she might die if he didn't kiss her. Not from heartbreak, not from embarrassment. It was almost as if she needed him for nourishment, to feed her soul, to fill her heart. And Colin couldn't remember anyone else ever needing him with such fervor. It humbled. It made him want her with an intensity that nearly buckled his knees. He looked at her, and somehow he didn't see the woman he'd seen so many times before. She was different. She glowed. She was a siren. Got it. And he wondered how on earth no one had ever noticed before.
Colin, she whispered. He took a step forward, barely a half a foot, but it was close enough so that when he touched her chin and tipped her face up, her lips were mere inches from his. Their breath mingled. The air grew hot and heavy. Penelope was trembling. He could feel that under his fingers, but he wasn't so sure that he wasn't trembling too. He assumed he'd say something flip and drool, like the devil-may-care fellow that he was reputed to be. Anything for you, perhaps, or maybe every woman deserves at least one kiss. But as he closed the bare distance between them, he realized that there was no words that could capture the intensity of the moment, no words for the passion, no words for the need, no words for the sheer epiphany of the moment. And so, on an otherwise unremarkable Friday afternoon in the heart of Mayfair, in a quiet drawing room on Mount Street, Colin Bridgerton kissed Penelope Featherington, and it was glorious. His lips touched hers softly at first, not because he was trying to be gentle, although if he'd had the presence of mind to think about such things, it probably would have occurred to him that this was her first kiss, and it ought to be reverent and beautiful and all the things a girl dreams about as she's lying in her bed at night. But in all truth, none of that was on Colin's mind. In fact, he was thinking of quite little. His kiss was soft and gentle because he was still so surprised that he was kissing her. He'd known her for years, but he'd never even thought about touching his lips to hers, and now he couldn't have let her go if the fires of hell were licking at his toes. He could barely believe what he was doing or that he wanted to do it so damned much. It wasn't the sort of kiss one initiates because one is overcome with passion or emotion or anger or desire. It was a slower thing, a learning experience for Colin just as much as for Penelope. And he was learning that everything he'd thought he'd known about kissing was rubbish. Everything else had been mere lips and tongue and softly murmured but meaningless words. This was a kiss. There was something in the friction, the way that he could hear and feel her breathe at the same time, something in the way that she held perfectly still, and yet he could feel her heart pounding through her skin. There was something in the fact that he knew it was for her. Colin moved his lips slightly to the left until he was nipping the corner of her mouth, softly tickling the very spot where her lips joined. His tongue dipped and traced, learning the contours of her mouth, tasting the sweet, salty essence of her. This was more than a kiss. His hands, which had been lightly splayed against her back, grew rigid, more tense as they pressed into the fabric of her dress. He could feel the heat of her under his fingertips, seeping up through the muslin, swirling in the delicate muscles of her back. He drew her to him, pulling her closer, closer, until their bodies were pressed together. He could feel her, the entire length of her, and it set him on fire. He was growing hard, and he wanted her. Dear God, how he wanted her. His mouth grew more insistent, his tongue darting forward, nudging her until her lips parted. He swallowed her soft moan of acquiescence, then pushed forward to taste her. She was sweet and a little bit tart from the lemonade, and she was clearly as intoxicating as fine brandy. Because Colin was starting to doubt his ability to remain on his feet, he moved his hands along the length of her, slowly, so as to not frighten her. She was soft, curvy, and lush, just as he'd always thought a woman should be. Her hips flared, and her bottom was perfect, and her breasts. Good God, her breasts felt good, pressing against his chest. His palms itched to cup them, but he forced his hands to remain where they were, rather enjoyably, on her derriere, so it wasn't really that much of a sacrifice. Beside the fact that he really shouldn't be groping a gently bred lady's breasts in the middle of her drawing room, he had rather a painful suspicion that if he touched her in that way, he would lose himself completely. Penelope, Penelope, he murmured, wondering why her name tasted so good on his lips. He was ravenous for her, heady and drugged by passion, and he wanted desperately for her to feel the same way. She felt perfect in his arms, but thus far, she had made no reaction. Oh, she had swayed in his arms and opened her mouth to welcome his sweet invasion, but other than that, she had done nothing. And yet, from the pant of her breath and the beat of her heart, he knew that she was aroused. He pulled back just a few inches so that he could touch her chin and tilt her face up towards his. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes that were dazed with passion, perfectly matching her lips, which were lightly parted, completely soft and thoroughly swollen from his kisses. She was beautiful, utterly, completely, soul-stirringly beautiful. He didn't know how he hadn't noticed it all these years. Was the world populated by blind men or merely stupid ones? You can kiss me too, he whispered, leaning his forehead lightly against hers. She did nothing but blink. A kiss, he murmured, lowering his lips to hers again, although just for a fleeting moment, is for two people. Her hands stirred at his back. What do I do? She whispered. Whatever you want to do. Slowly, tentatively, she lifted one of her hands to his face. Her fingers trailed lightly over his cheek, skimming along the line of his jaw until they fell away. Thank you, she whispered.
Yay!
That scene makes me giddy every time. So
Yes.
giddy. Now, the reason that we wanted to read that portion is not just for our own entertainment's sake, although
Lies, we're selfish.
there is no amount of times that I can reread that scene and not feel giddy and like blushing and like a little schoolgirl having
And
her
smiley.
own first kiss.
Yes. It's like one of those first kiss things that you just remember your own first kiss.
Like I have goosebumps.
Yeah. Like I out of all the book kisses, like I liked this one the most because she asked, this is Regency times, right? Like that was a big deal to me at being a Jane Austen fan and everything else. Like women were not allowed to
Desire.
initiate any. They had to be pure and chaste, and they couldn't even think those kind of thoughts, right? So it was a big deal when I read this for the first time that, oh, we have a Regency heroine that is bold,
horny,
right? She is bold. And I don't even think she was horny. I just think I think that she, and Penelope in the book is, Penelope in the book is older. And she really does believe she's almost on the shelf.
And 20.
I think in the book, the reason the show was so different is because they had to make Penelope desperate in the show because she was younger. They had to make that whole I'm going to be on the shelf thing believable because they wanted to use the source material for the fans. Because this is the one scene that we have exactly just about as the book reads.
Yeah.
Very, very exactly. I would say it's probably the only scene.
The only portion that is
even the mirror scene is not their scene. It's Benedict and Sophie's scene from their book, but actually adding in the mirror in a way. Like it doesn't even add in why he wanted the mirror, but that could have been actor contracts not wanting to go there. I can see that, like, because that requires actual physical touching of bare naked part. But yeah, this is the one scene in the whole entire season that is almost exactly the book.
Caveat that in the series, I would say that Penelope was a more active participant in that kiss.
Yeah. Well, and the kiss was shorter, less time. The kiss on the show was the kiss up until he says, hey, you can kiss me too. A kiss is for two people. I think that part was skipped.
I like probably every other person, basically like just loop that. Start the kiss, get to the end of the kiss, and before she even says thank you, just get to the foreheads resting, and then rewind, and it plays again. And I just pretend in my head that the kiss is just 20 minutes long.
Right?
20 minutes of
I do that with the makeup scene at the end. I hear Lady Whistledown go at a loss for words. And then it goes into the bedroom scene. And because it's only 21 seconds long. So if I want to make it anything worth my while of watching, I have to rewind it about 5, 6, 7 times.
If any of our fans out there could loop these scenes in a video for us, we would be ever so thankful.
Yeah. Over and over and over.
Stop us having to hit the rewind, like our poor buttons hitting rewind so many times.
My remote, yeah. My Fire Stick remote is Amazon's like, do you need a new remote? Your rewind is a little messed up. Like it's not working like it used to.
Broken?
Or the fast forward, because like you're wanting to see the carriage scene and you accidentally went too far the last time, so the show starts over and you have to fast forward all the way to the end.
But I think, one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about this scene is I know that book Colin and series Colin are dramatically different, but this is one of the few scenes where we get it from Colin's perspective, whereas a lot of the TV series is from Penelope's perspective. And we've talked about this in previous episodes where Antony's season did a lot better job, and Daphne's as well, of showing both partners' inner struggles. And that is something that I feel we've really missed in the season. We have missed a lot of, dialogue of Colin and the struggles that he's had. And we are left trying to piece together what he is feeling through the little movements, the little gestures, the little things that he does. We are left trying to piece those things together because we have not had enough backstory explaining where Colin is at emotionally through this. So because they have not given that to us, we are going to go back to our source material, which is Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, to talk about specifically this scene because it is so similar that I feel like we can take his inner monologue of how he is thinking, how he is feeling. This is a kiss. All the kisses that I've ever felt beforehand were mere mechanical movement. This is a kiss. This sets me on fire. This burns my passion, my soul. This is everything.
Yes. I want to get on my soapbox about perspective because the society then is very different from the society now. And I think a choice was made to not even acknowledge Penelope's body type at all because they didn't want the backlash, which we got the backlash anyway. We were going to get the backlash anyway because this is 2024. And this book, their book, the date of their book is 1824. So yes, we see it being filmed and the season happens in 1815, but this is 200 years ago. There was a different aesthetic for women because of what women were needed for. It was all about having children and things like that. But the aesthetic was different for what men wanted. Yes.
Colin has been traveling through Greece and Cyprus. Let me stand up and show you Greek and Cypriot women, especially back then, were not bred rake thin. He likes himself. Well, we already know that Luke likes himself.
He likes a little. He likes a little fleshy. Colin likes fleshy women, and not only that, like pretty much every country he's traveled to, aside from probably France, Italy tends to have more curvy women.
Skinny women Middle Eastern were a sign of poverty.
Poverty.
That you could not provide enough sustenance to keep your woman to a healthy weight where she could carry babies and carry her body and had the energy to do things.
And back then a woman was for breeding children and her body had to feed them.
Yes.
So they looked for different things. And we look at that differently. So the aesthetic so far, even with this show, but I mean, in most of the media we see, and most of the romances we see have been thin women getting mostly thin men, but there is media out there where bigger men can get an aesthetically pleasing woman. I'll say standard because everybody has their own thing.
Yes,
everybody has their own body type that they like. Like I'm not into muscles. I'm not into muscly guys. I like tall, nerdy dudes. Okay, if you're tall and you're nerdy, I'm there for it. Give me glasses. I like a tall, nerdy guy. The best example I have is comedic actor Stephen Merchant. I think he is adorable. He's tall. He's nerdy. Comes off nerdy. Love him. He plays nerdy people. If you're not sure who that is, he was the guy that almost got Amy on Big Bang Theory when Sheldon realized he loved Amy and she was his earworm and he came to get her.
Okay.
And Stephen Merchant loves Sheldon and he's like,
is he the geologist? No. Oh, no. Okay. Yeah. I know the one now. The one she goes on the date with, and he's like,
yeah, she's on the date.
Yeah.
And he's getting them back together. Like, I was
thinking of Bert because he's also amazing. Bert. I know. I mean,
Bert's funny. Bert's funny, but not my type. His voice is too monotone for me. Yeah. I love it. But I like a sense of humor. I like intelligent. I'm definitely a sapiosexual, as we've talked in our last pod. But yeah, so everybody has their different body type, and Colin likes curvier women. And yes. I do think it was a choice for that not to be why. Because they never, and I think that's the big issue. They never specifically say in the show why Penelope doesn't get prospects.
No.
They never out and out say it.
It's insinuated it is because of her weight. It's
by her sisters, though. It's never anyone in the ton that says anything. And they just say like, with so little hope for success. Like why? Because we know in Regency speak,
they are saying they are shading her without the writers having the actual goal to actually address the issue. And to me, sometimes as a bigger girl,
they should have
address it.
I think they should have. I think they should have said something because if they never specifically said why Penelope was not marketable on the Marriage Mart. And her sisters, I mean, Philippa found somebody pretty quickly.
Cruelty and dimwit.
Yeah. And the reason, and it still took her over a year to get married because of the money situation. Well, more than that, like 18 months.
In the book, they took 3 and 5 seasons respectively. Her sisters.
Yeah. They took longer. And the reason they took longer is because of Portia Featherington. Yes. Because the dad was not a gambler in the book. Portia was
untitled.
Vulgar. He was untitled, and Portia was vulgar and title seeking. And in the show, we have Portia seeking security for all 3 of her daughters. She didn't get any of that. Well, I mean, Penelope married a Bridgerton. She ended up getting security, but mainly she didn't need it because she was Whistledown. Yeah. But she got all of her daughters in the show got love matches. Their men adored and loved them. She wanted security so bad, and she wanted a title higher than a baron. She was very publicly.
I don't think that Prudence is a love Madge. I think that relationship is more like Lord Anderson, where she is growing to love Mr. Dankworth.
I'm saying he loves her.
Yes.
Like
but a love match is
all
when both
three.
love.
Yeah, but all three. And I think she doesn't know how to take him because he's so overly adoring of her.
Because
And
she's
she's
only
never
had
had that before.
No.
Yeah, she doesn't know how to receive love. And I think that we watch her arc in this season was learning because she was seeking her mother's approval and she wasn't getting it.
For a little while, I actually thought that she may have been of the Weatherby Granville variety, where because I don't want to do that. It flattens my hair. We started, but I did not
I just
enjoy
don't
it.
like it. Yeah, I did not enjoy it.
So I actually
and that still may be the case, but she did warm to his affection over the course of the season.
Yeah. Tangent queens, we need to gallop back to the kid.
Yeah. So anyways, perspective. The first two seasons, even though they were not Penelope seasons, we saw the Penelope Colin romance from her point of view. She believed he was out of her league. She believed there was no way he would ever have feelings for her until he started acting differently in season 2. And she started thinking, he seems like he's saying things that sound good. But she was even having trouble, like Prudence with Dankworth. She was having trouble believing it. And then she heard what he said to Fife in the Lord Squad, and that crushed everything. Now, season 3, I believe the way it's written, it is supposed to be Colin's point of view. But because they wanted the Penelope love story of herself, which is needed, I think that having Penelope be a boss babe in the show when she wasn't in the book is a great way to modernize this book because it is being aired in 2024. She doesn't need a protector. We needed to see that as well in media where someone is loved just because of who they are, how they've always been, and not for anything they can bring to the table or do for, right? So many of us are people pleasers. I think I resonated with that for Colin, but it was very hard for the general public to see the romance had been growing coming from Penelope's point of view and from our societal point of view of there's no way Colin Bridgerton would want to be with Penelope Featherington. Are you kidding me? So people honestly believe that he caught feelings in the study. Like that's the first time he looked at her and she was different, or right at the kiss. The thing is, though, is he's just as insecure as she is. And if you really follow his point of view and you really look at everyone says, but he says this. Yes. But if you look at everything he says all the time, like when he walks up to her at the very first dance he dances with her at, and I've said it before, she says, "Oh, I didn't know you would be here." And he goes, "Sorry to disappoint." Like he truly believes she is the most eligible of the Featheringtons. And in the show, they are titled. And with her being the most eligible of a titled family, her expectations, because her 2 older sisters were not, the eldest sister is supposed to have the best prospects, but that was Prudence. So he believes she's the Daphne. Think of all of the expectations that were on Daphne in his family that he grew up in. That is what Colin thinks and believes for Penelope Featherington. She is the Daphne. She is required to find somebody titled. She is required to find somebody to elevate the family. The other 2 girls completely took a piss. Basically, they got love matches, and I love you, Finchy, love you, and Dankworth, you're growing on me, but you are very pretty. But he really did not think that if 2 people sat down to come up with a marriage contract and his name was on the application, so that's basically how marriages worked back then. You went to the family, you asked permission, and they told you yes or no. He could have gotten a no, and he believed he would get a no from Portia Feathering.
Or if he did get a yes, it was purely because the mum was title seeking. And
well, I don't think he even considered that he could get a yes because he circumvented his own family. He knew his mother was cool with it, but he circumvented Antony. You and I just had this discussion about the wording of episode 5 when Hyacinth says, "Finally, you arrive." They were expected that day. The whole family knew they were coming.
Wait, get on your horse, Missy. I want to talk about the kiss. I just want to talk about romance.
But we got to go in understanding because so we'll talk about the scripting of the kiss. Let's talk about the scripting of the kiss.
We've got Miss Penelope sitting despondent in the window, like
Mhm.
looking out the window like a princess,
Damsel in
a
distress.
damsel, a
Yeah.
princess sitting in the window waiting for her prince to come rescue her. Penelope is absolutely like this is 1000%. And Julia Quinn loved to follow certain tropes.
Mhm.
And some people say they're overdone, and yeah, they are, but I don't even care. I'm just here for the romance, people. Penelope is our damsel in distress, sitting in her tower window, waiting for her prince to come rescue her from her awful family.
And Colin is at his house looking out, not looking down, not looking like is she coming out of the house,
Mhm.
looking across. He's looking in the normal window she looks from, the drawing room, because she has a view of Bridgerton house from the drawing room.
Like
Her bedroom's in the back.
how can people think that he did not have feelings? We see him looking. Can I see her in the window? I need to see her. I need to see if
He
she's okay.
knows.
It is not a want at this point. It is a need. His soul
Mm-hmm.
needs to know that she is okay.
And I just want to point out, like, pause your TV and walk up to his vest and look at it, folks. You see, it's got the animals. It's the most unique vest he has the whole season in his wardrobe. And he only wears it in this scene
Mhm.
when he's looking for her, when he's desperate to find out how she's feeling. Right. And he's not talking to anybody. Remember how bad he wanted to go talk to Marina in season 1? He's not talking to anybody in his house. He's in this vest. Look at it. You see all the big animals. There's a horse rearing, there's a monkey, and there's a hummingbird, and like all these different animals. But all over in the blank space is butterflies all over that vest. There's butterflies all over it.
Because he's
So
got
his
butterflies coming out of
well,
him.
and her prince, he's all about her, right? He's covered in butterflies. He wants to know how his butterflies doing. He's a planner. We have talked about it in our podcast from day one. He is an internalizer. He thinks things through. I equate him to the meme of the guy with all the yarn and the pins and the post-it notes. He has a plan. And think of everything that he had to get into place.
Mhm.
He had to know, like, he had to find out Penelope's state of mind. He had to get Ray alone. He had to be able to wave her down wherever she was at to be able to talk to her. He
Because if
bribed her.
because if he went to the
To,
front door and all the
mm-hmm.
servants knew, there's not I mean, Portia's pretty dismissive of Penelope anyway, so there is a chance that even if she said, oh, I think if Ray were the one who was gotten first, as in he went to the footman at the door, because for some reason none of them have butlers. None of them have butlers. And it shits me,
I
okay? It
know.
shits me.
That's the first time we've dropped the F bomb on this
I will remove
podcast.
it, it's fine.
And it got to be you.
And I'm just upset about the butlers, okay? I'm passionate
I
about the
know.
butlers.
Why are there no butlers? Like, seriously. But no, so Varley would have gone to the door. And honestly, Varley likes Penelope and she's super excited
Mm,
that she gets with
I don't
Colin,
I don't
but
think it was Varley that went to
she
the
would
door.
still
I
she
think it
would
would have been a
still have to
butler. She would tell Portia.
she would tell Portia. And I personally think the way we saw how Portia talked to Penelope, I think Portia would keep that separate. I don't
Yeah.
think she would let him in.
No.
Because she wouldn't never believe he was there to propose by any means, shape, or form. And she would have just said, tell him go away.
Whereas Ray absolutely respects Penelope's privacy. Like I've been watching through the episodes for the last few days. In the first 4 episodes, she gives way more distance than is proper to do so as a
Yes.
lady's maid, as a chaperone.
Mm-hmm.
She gives way more space
Yeah, because
to Penelope.
you see Violet, how close Violet is to Francesca and
Yeah.
John.
Yep.
She's twice that far back.
Oh,
She's a whole
more.
other length
Yeah.
back. Yeah, she's given them plenty of space.
Like
And
you needed to make sure that your daughter was or her suitor wasn't filling her with words of desire or improper conversation,
yes.
improper topics. You needed to protect them from that. And we see that in Casanova. He's like, you cannot you cannot intervene, you cannot talk to my daughter before the wedding because I'm not having you fill her with sin
Right.
before marriage.
Right. You had to be close enough to kind of hear the conversation, but not hear the whole conversation.
Mm.
You had to know when they dropped their voice because they might be saying something intimate.
Yes.
Because as a chaperone, it was your job. If there was gossip that got out, you had to be able to stand up for them in the court to the queen, to whomever, to say, no, they are both of good character. I was there. That was what a chaperone was for, was to keep the reputation. Wasn't necessarily to protect their virtue, although most people did protect their virtue just in case the relationship fell through or the courtship fell through. But it was to be able to vouch for them if any sort of rumor got out. Because as we read in here, like Colin said, the power of the word is incredible. If gossip gets out, it spreads. People are going to believe it, whether it's true or not.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So
we see that happen a lot. And Penelope is actually very, aside from what she does to Eloise, she is, as she said, or as Lady Danbury says, you know, I cannot tolerate a lie. Well, Lady Whistledown says that, but Lady Danbury reiterates it. And I think
that's the thing, like
Lady Danbury knows that if it's been put in Whistledown, it is cold hard facts. And I think she knows that she does not, for a gossip writer, she doesn't embellish. She does. I mean, she embellishes with words of like how to draw you in, but never with the truth.
She makes it entertaining.
Yeah. She embellishes with words, but not the truth.
The truth. Yeah, it's still the truth. And that's what people have come to learn. I mean, she's been writing it now for 3 years, and it's people like there were multiple scandal sheets in the beginning, but now in this season, you don't hear about any other scandal sheet. She has put everybody else out of business because she actually writes the truth. And people have learned this.
Yes.
Which it really does make what she does to Eloise.
Everyone else would say, oh, a gentleman was caught. Whereas Penelope was the only one who actually called out word for word who everyone was.
Yeah. And we also know that, and I think it's important to note in this scene, because I sent you those screenshots of his face.
Can you tell our listeners where it is that you get those? Because I forget the name of it, but it's brilliant.
It's called capthat.com. And I've talked about it in our group. It's CAP-THAT.com. It gives you the frame by frame screenshots of every scene in so many shows, so many.
Yes.
And I found so much good stuff.
There is also the website Rave, in which you can do watch parties with people. And because of that, it gives you the ability to screenshot. You just have to sign into it. You log in and then you just sign into your Netflix account as you normally would as you log in. And it allows you to screenshot and do all the things on it that you cannot do. So for anyone who wants to do that for other shows as well, anything that's on Netflix, I'm not entirely sure if it probably allows you to do it on Disney and Prime and all those things as well. It's just kind of a third-party hosting, but it was specifically designed to do watch parties. But because of that feature, it allows you to screenshot.
And if you're listening and you're part of our Facebook group, just, drop us a little feedback on whether you would want to be part of a watch party with us. We are considering ways to generate revenue because we do have some expenses to our little fund. So that's something we had thought of. That's why we saw that and found that. So if that's something you'd be interested in, let us know, because I think it would be fun.
Yeah, I think we might put out a poll of what our listeners would be interested in as extras and that kind of thing. Obviously, with you and me being in completely different time zones, and I'm hoping our listeners have better sleep schedule than you and me do, because even though we are literally across the world from each other, Patty and I both have horrendous sleep schedules, but we are 8 hours different apart. So trying to organize a time that would meet our listeners' needs as well could be tricky, but we will see what we can do. And let's jump back in. And I think, so we've just talked about Penelope kind of sitting despondent. Colin has come to the front door. He has organized Ray to go and fetch Penelope for him. Obviously, he has also instructed her to keep this news. I think that was part of paying her her off to keep quiet from Portia and from the other servants, because servants.
And anybody who's been in our group for a while knows that I do not think it was monetary payment.
I think it was both.
monetary.
I think it was
monetary payment.
I think it was both. I think
because you gotta
you
gotta think about it. I mean, he had to be stalking the house to be able to catch Ray.
Unhinged Colin.
I just want to say too, like, she was pretty far behind them. He only got a decent look at her probably at the market when she walked by. Like, I mean, honestly, what he had to do to finally grab her, I would have loved to see that scene. I'm saying, to grab her and go, hey, this needs to happen. I need this to happen. Are you on board with me? Like, this is the whole scene. The whole reason that I bribed her business is the whole reason I came up with the idea for the fanfic that he planted her there, that she's really a distant relative. Because how in the world did he really get her to agree to this? Like, because she's very loyal to Penn, and she doesn't, it took a lot of planning. Colin does a lot of things. You can't tell me that he decides everything on a dime, because a lot of what he does requires a lot of elaborate planning.
Forethought. A
lot of forethought. I mean, to get his footmen on board and his siblings occupied, and to know what day his mom is going to the market with the girls,
he
and how long they would have.
As Penelope says about his writing, you make it look effortless, but it is not.
But it's not effortless. No. He put in a lot of effort, and he came after midnight. The moon is high.
Oh, so this is... did he come after midnight, or did he come by the light of the moon? Because there is a couple Lady Whistledowns that we do talk about Lady Whistledown in the side stories, but these ones I think are very pointed towards the scene. And even though this Lady Whistledown wasn't, it was read at, I think, around halfway through the episode, but it's still very much to do with it. It says, by the light of the moon, it is easy for one to mistake the night as a place of safety, which is why, perhaps, both Featherington sisters snuck away early last night with their husbands. And it's like, it says both Featherington sisters, but it's about to be all three Featherington sisters with their husbands / to-be husbands.
Foreshadowing, because technically all three Featherington sisters left that party early. Yes. One just ran out.
That's what I'm saying.
All three husbands left too. Colin ran out. Like, they all left early, and they all got an education, but hers came a little later.
When it said this, I actually thought, oh, they're going to kiss and someone's going to oversee them, when I originally watched, when I very, very first saw that scene, because it is easy for one to mistake the night as a place of safety. And I thought, oh no, Penelope's going to get kissed by him and someone's going to oversee it. Not that that would be a problem, but one must never forget that despite the cover of night, there are still eyes upon us at all times. And that was the part that I thought, oh, is someone going to oversee them? But no, Ray did her magic, and she was like, there is a spell that makes you...
boo.
Bibbidi bobbidi boo.
She's a fairy god lady's maid.
She put she cast the invisibility spell over them, and they were invisible.
Every time I see Penelope's Lady Whistledown cloak, I think of the invisibility cloak, honestly.
It actually reminds me of the fairy godmother cloak, to be honest, because it's got that same hood shape.
Yeah.
And then the next Lady Whistledown, which is what is being read while Penelope is looking out the window, is, we know there is one young lady who most certainly wishes her plans had remained in the dark. Penelope Featherington, who was so certain that she would not find a husband on her own that she had to enlist the help of Mr. Colin Bridgerton. And while we know Miss Featherington's marital prospects were slim at best, this recent scandal will certainly make any further hopes disappear. Now, I think she knew what she was doing when she wrote this, that Lord Remington would be rolling to the front door the next day to read this article. And if his goddess, Miss Lady Whistledown, has written that Penelope's prospects are gone, that is word of law.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at the fact that you corrected yourself.
Well,
I don't know why I found that funny, but I did.
I was like, he can't run. That was a bit inappropriate. Let me rephrase that.
Right. Like, it's just such a human thing to do, though. It's very human. But yeah, like,
he figuratively ran.
One, everybody was talking about it as she ran out. She knew she had to mention it. Two, she knew the second she published it, Remington wasn't coming.
Yeah.
Because he reads Whistledown the second it comes into his house.
Whistledown.
So, and three, what she did here was she wrote it in such a way that made Colin look kind and gallant and like her savior, to not put him down. I reason number 76, how Penelope Featherington tells everyone she's Lady Whistledown and nobody figures it out, because the only person in that room who, I mean, yes, they were all saying like, you were kind, but your efforts are pointless, they still would be looking at him in a negative light, like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
But she totally wrote it in a way that absolves him. Like, she asked him, she didn't, he suggested. She rewrote history. So she wrote it in such a way that totally absolves him from any guilt or talk from the ton, things like that. And she really does just
Throw herself under
paint
the bus.
herself. Yeah, she throws herself under the bus for him. And I honestly think that anyone.
Excuse us for the brief intermittence there. Some people turned up at my door, so I had to, and we've kind of lost our place. So where we're going to jump off into is another Lady Whistledown, which is read just before Penelope leaves her room to go and meet Colin. And it says, "This author would not be surprised if Miss Featherington should wish to return to her familiar shadows once and for all," which is rather an interesting term because in my next part on my notes is, "By the glow of moonlight, Colin calls upon Penelope."
Well, and that's the thing too, because where she comes walking from, she comes walking out of the shadows into the moonlight. It's not quite sunlight. It's not quite being fully exposed, but she does come from the shadows right outside the house into the moonlight.
Because this episode is called How Bright the Moon? Yeah.
How Bright the Moon, yeah.
How Bright the Moon. That fits into this episode so well because, I mean...
That the title of the episode is Scene, period.
Yes. Because how bright can the moon shine upon such a perfect moment? I don't think this moment would have been as like
she's wearing a dress that reflects the moonlight.
She is the moonlight in this scene.
Yeah, her skin is, in my TikTok talking about this kiss, like her skin in the moonlight is exactly like what he was talking about in his journal, the way starlight dances across skin.
Before Penelope leaves the room, we for starters see that she is in this, absolutely stunning blue and silver shimmering gown with the little puffed sleeves. And you know what makes me really happy now? And this is an absolute tangent. Again, I don't even care at this point. Every time I see puff sleeves now, it makes me think of Anne with an E, with her little, and how excited all the properly young ladies have their puff sleeves.
Sleeves.
You have not made it in life until you have puffed sleeves.
And that's the first time she feels true, real love from another human being is when Matthew gives her the puff sleeves.
Yes.
So it's very,
It was something that wasn't.
We can talk Anne of Green Gables all day because Penelope and Colin are Anne and Gilbert coded, very much so.
Well, it's the first time she's ever been given something that wasn't out of necessity. It was a desire of hers. There is something different about, and mums get this all the time. You talked about you hate when people give you gifts out of necessity, things that you need. It is a whole different feeling to receive something that you want. It's something frivolous, but it's something that your heart desires. And this is the puff sleeve moment. So let's clock back in, but I just wanted to put that little...
Well, and I just want to point out, like, this girl knows how to wallow. She knows how to be depressed. Like, she's depressed, sitting in her window seat, staring out the window. True damsel in distress. She does it so well, though. But she's such a romantic, our Penelope. She is such a girly reader, romance girl that she is dressed up for her isolation. She's not in her dressing gown. She is not in her nightgown. She is dressed to the nines, like she's about to. She's waiting.
She's not in her Hogwarts finest
pajamas. I'm covered up in my poncho, blanket poncho, because I'm not appropriate for company. I'm in my jams. But yeah, she is absolutely dressed to the nines, just hoping. I think there's still a little tiny piece of her that was hoping that Remington might still show up or that Colin would show up. Like, they haven't even had the kiss yet, but she's hoping, like, there's still a tiny, that her being all dressed up in that dress, there is a tiny, that she never, her flame never goes out for Colin, ever.
Well, and that is one of the Whistledown articles that we will talk about in a little bit. The most dangerous of emotions, hope.
Penelope never fully, well, I will say, I don't even think she fully lost hope here, but when we talk about the willow tree, her walking out from under the willow tree is like her official goodbye to that whole, what she thinks is goodbye to that whole situation. But
I would have even said, it was when she ran away after the kiss. But let's talk about the kiss first.
Yeah. So, but she's dressed to the nines in her wallow period.
So Penelope's hair in the scene is probably my favorite. I know it is so simple, but it is those soft, romantic, beautiful, light little waves. And It is trailing down her back, just like he,
cascading down her shoulder.
yes, just like he likes.
And she walks out from the shadows and into the moonlight. And
But she looks genuinely surprised to see that it's Colin.
oh yeah, she says, "What are you doing here?" But I love when he doesn't speak. He turns to Ray and she just bolts.
Like
And
unspoken.
then yeah, unspoken. And then he says, "I had to see you. I had to see how you were." Because I bribed her to give us a moment alone. Penn does this little thing like, he bribed my maid. You know what I mean? Like, it's just this little tiny moment, but she acknowledges that he is continuing to try and see her alone. His big thing is being alone with her. And this is the first time she is actively acknowledging it, that it's not for a lesson. It's not for a lesson.
What do people honestly think that was happening in the scene if it weren't for there was nothing innocent that he could have been wanting with her in this moment that would have occurred after midnight that her lady's maid couldn't have been present for, like she has been for every other meeting of them. Why could she have not have been there for this if it weren't for the fact of one, him wanting to potentially ask her to marry him in this moment, or two,
which is what I think.
Yeah, that's what we both think. We both think that he went there with the purpose of, your reputation is not ruined. We will get married. It will be fine.
This was what I wanted all along.
Yes. It wasn't the way he wanted it to happen, but now that it has happened, he's like, okay, our time has come. Let's make this happen. But she gets in first with her dramatics.
Yeah, she gets super dramatic. So the thing is, though, is like he says he wanted them to get along. He needed to see how she was. And she acknowledges he must have read Whistledown. And he says, she's beastly to write such things about you. And here's reason number 727 why everybody should have known Penelope Featherington was Lady Whistledown.
I'm quite certain that we were up to 900 and something. We were like just
but these are all the reasons. So they're all going to have a different number. They're not going to be in order. Okay. Because they're all on the list. Not a real list, just a pad. But yeah, she says everybody was talking about it. So if she didn't report it, it would have been suspicious. Now, there's a beat, even before Lady Whistledown starts talking here, there's a beat, and then Whistledown's talking. So you kind of see them kind of like looking at each other. But watch Colin's face, especially at Cap That. I got every single frame. There's actually 5 frames, but I wanted to do a four-part frame, and I will post it in the group. Just remind me. We got to put it on my calendar when this will post so that I can do it, so that they have a visual aid. There's 4 facial expressions. You are seeing him process what she said. I don't think he's processing like, why is she saying it like that? Is she Whistledown? I don't think that's the process. I think the process he's going through is, I have been trying to get Whistledown to write about us this entire time. Why now? Why
didn't she write about me chasing after you out of a ball where people could assume at least that we were alone together? We weren't, but they could have made that assumption.
Why didn't she write about us promenading at Hyde Park or whatever that park is? She says it and I forget. It's Hyde Park in real life, but Rotten Road.
Rotten Road.
Yeah. So why didn't Whistledown write about us walking at Rotten Road? Why didn't Whistledown write about us being at the market? I nodded at everybody I knew. I wanted people to see us together. Why didn't Whistledown write about any of this? Why weren't people talking about this? Like, he cannot fathom.
Dude was walking around with the party hats with those little whistleblowers being like, look at us.
Look at me, look at me, look at me. He was, if you go back and watch that scene, the market scene, he's literally nodding at so many people. I think he wanted to attract notice. He wanted somebody to be talking about them, and he just doesn't understand. And this kind of fits the Colin narrative from the book. Why does no one else see what he sees in Penelope? Why does no one else see that she's worth talking about? He doesn't get it. And in that moment, you can see that play on his face. Like, he just has been trying so hard. Why now? Why this? Why this humiliation for her? He wanted her to be a courtship that wasn't a courtship, because Colin doesn't like to lie, and he did say what he said at the end of season 2. And I honestly think that romantic, impulsive, naive Colin Bridgerton just thought one day he was going to walk up to Penelope Featherington and say, well, are you going to marry me or not? And then they would get married, which is kind of what happened. But because he got insecure, a lot of crap happened up to that point. But I really do think like he was so charmed in his life that he thought that we're going to get married someday and it's going to be easy. And then it wasn't easy for 3 seasons, for 3 years. It was not easy.
So the next part that I want to talk about that isn't easy, and we will dive much further into this interaction when we get up to the sides stories of season 3, episode 2, in our next podcast episode that we're going to record. We will dive into this further, but we will just talk about specifically the words here that Penelope reiterates to Colin. And he is completely unaware that these words have come from Portia, that they've just had this interaction where Portia puts down Penelope, says, you have to be realistic. You are never going to find someone on your 3rd season out. I thought that these new outfits were just for you to feel pretty for yourself. Not that you honestly believed that anyone was ever going to love you or marry you, essentially is what she was saying. And so when Penelope comes out and she starts kind of word vomiting to Colin, basically all these insecurities that Portia has just thrown on her.
And the ton.
And the ton. Yeah, they've also, she has some serious deep-seated insecurities for very good reason. They have been reiterated. Whew, did you hear that? My husband just said one of those like dad sneezes. And when I say dad sneezes, it's a very specific kind of sneeze that like makes the like whole planet shake. He's outside and it still may be fried. So Penelope remarks that she's a stupid girl for thinking that she would ever have a chance at love. When she originally told Colin, sad and stupid, when she had originally told Colin at the markets that she was only wanting to get married for freedom. And this is the first time that she's actually being honest with him that in her heart of hearts, she just wants to be loved. And I think this is one of the moments where he realizes he may actually have a chance then. If it's not just title, no one loves her more than he does. So if it is love that she is after, this gives him hope because he thinks, her mother has only ever wanted her to marry for title, to marry for, to elevate their family. But if she,
and he thought she wanted the same thing. Yeah, he thought she was, we were talking over each other and then we got interrupted for bubbles.
Ezra's like, who needs to gallop along when you can just bubble your way through life? Kids and bubbles.
But yeah, we were both trying to get an idea out, and I can't tell you again what my idea was. ADHD is real, my friends. So she said sad Supergirl. Oh, yeah, my point was Colin believes this is the first time he realizes I think he has a chance. You said that. But I was going with, and we know this because everybody is always putting her down. Now, he doesn't know Portia is actively putting her down on a daily basis until episode 5 when he walks in on it. But this is also reason number 13, why Colin is the right choice and Debling is not. Because Colin immediately shuts her down. You shouldn't say such things. And he had just told her at that ball, you are Penelope Featherington. Don't you forget that. And we'll talk about this in the next episode too. Like when she sees Debling and she talks about social contagion and she's like hiding away and she's this horrible thing. He just lets her talk like that. He's cool with it. And then he actually praises her for it. Like her being that bad, icky, isolated person is what he finds attractive about her, which I think is just gross. But yeah, so Colin shuts her down. Like, don't talk about yourself like that. And here's what he should have, just because their communication issues from season 1 is that when one of them gets nervous and is afraid of what's going to come out of the other one's mouth, they cut them off. So that's what Penelope ends up doing. He should have just said right here, you shouldn't say this stuff about yourself. Don't talk about the woman I love like that.
So he wants her to see herself. He wants her to see herself the way that he sees her, just as she did for him. If Penelope Featherington can see me this way, then so can I. If I can see Penelope Featherington this way, so can she.
Yep.
Googly eyes.
They are each other's. I know.
So
he's her lobster. I'm gonna Phoebe that business.
100% loves. But this is the true rom-com era, because when we read out the book excerpt of how the scene kind of transpires just before, it comes off a little bit more romantic, a little bit more serious drama, sexual tensiony. But the way that they play it out in the series is rom-com-esque. And I actually really
Yeah.
quite like the kind of lighthearted, because it is one of the few
Yes.
times that we do actually get Colin's flippant, fun, silly kind of
Yes.
nature from the book.
ADHD. His ADHD. He can't help but reply. Like all the times you say something and I say something at the same time, or you say something and I elaborate on it. Like I'm talking in parentheses to your sentence. And he does the same thing. Like she's like, I could die tomorrow. You're not going to die
Well,
tomorrow. Like,
we've got to read the Lady Whistledown part, and then we go into that part.
mm-hmm.
So Lady Whistledown at this point now cuts in, because they can see Penelope is getting down on herself. She's really putting herself down, thinking nothing is ever going to change for her now. She's never going to get out of this house. She's never going to get her freedom. This is her life from now on. This is the part where she has hit rock bottom, and Lady Whistledown comes in. Perhaps a return to the shadows is for the best. After all, a small taste of the light can lead to that most dangerous of emotions, hope. And once hope is lost, a lady may become reckless. Yeah, she does. She's
She
gonna get her
does.
guy. She's gonna
Well,
get
she
her
gets
guy.
bold, and I will say, like Nicola has said this in interviews, that this is really brave of Penelope to do, and it
Yeah.
really is. Like in the book, it comes off brave too, because at first she says, "Forget it, I didn't say anything," and then she emboldens herself, and she's like, "No,
No.
I
Yeah.
did. I always." Decide not to say something. I always decide not to ask for what I want. And in the book, that should have told Colin right there. She wants to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
She wants to kiss Colin Bridgerton. I almost wish that line would have been included because, I mean, we all want them to get together and have happy times sooner than they did. If she would have said that line to series show Colin, who obviously, at least to me, obviously had feelings for her long before this moment, I think he
Yeah.
would have jumped on that in a heartbeat. If she would have said, I am done minimizing myself. I am going to ask for what I want, and I want you to kiss me.
I could die
I'm a lost
tomorrow.
cause.
I could die
Yeah, I'm a
I'm gonna
lost
die.
cause, apparently. I could die tomorrow and never have been kissed, and I want to be kissed. And I think if she would have done that, now
And this is the
we're
first
gonna get
time
into scripting in a minute, but I think that he was trying to say something and she overtalked him. But yeah, I think
we've
that
never done that.
we've never done that. It's totally an ADHD thing. And in her case, it's an insecurity thing. But I honestly think that if these two would just shut up and give the other person a chance to speak for a minute, everything would have been good.
Is that advice for them or us?
It's advice for them. For us, it's just good entertainment.
But so she explains to Colin that, especially now with what's happened and with Lady Whistledown writing about it, that she's not, that she's never been kissed and she's not sure that she ever will be. But I think in this moment, she truly just wanted to be kissed for the first time by someone that she loved, rather than someone that she would marry for practical reasons. She knows that she's never going to love anyone like she does Colin. Like, even if anyone, by some miracle of a chance, does end up marrying her, she does not want her first kiss to be a practical one, because I think even she knows, especially after the Marina situation, that you get married and you have to perform certain duties in order. Like, I didn't realize back then that you were not married until you consummated the marriage, which is wild, but she would have
And
had
a lot
to
of marriage contracts, had a clause in there that if it went unconsummated for a year, that they could automatically be annulled. They just had to have chaperone witnesses to say it had never been consummated.
Poor Mr. Finch.
Mr. Finch could have been annulled. But nobody knew they weren't doing it because
well, in her mind, they were doing it all the time. Just not in her mind, not in her pants.
Right. She had no clue. She picked it up real quick, though.
But I do love that the scene, I could die tomorrow. That is just word for word from the book. And I love that they actually kept it. They changed the tone of it a little bit, but the whole essence of that paragraph, that whole scene was word for word. And I love, because Penelope and Colin do have that air of genuine friendship to them as well. It's not just lovers. It's not friends to lovers. Like Kate and Anthony, they are beautiful for each other, but I would not call them best friends. Penelope and Colin are best friends, and they have that light air of nature to them, even after the carriage scene where, every single one of us were needing to go jump in a lake of our own after watching that. They laugh.
Yes.
And it was perfect. And this moment
They
where
still find funny things funny together.
yeah,
Because funny things happen in the middle of passion.
yeah,
It does.
it does. And Penelope is like in the full-blown fits of being a young debutante in the
She's
fits of
hysterical.
despair. She is
Yeah.
a hysterical debutante. And this is like, he's like, oh, here we go. Come on,
But see,
Penelope, get a grip.
and
Like,
Penelope has had anxiety for a long time. I mean,
yeah.
that girl has anxiety. And I love, like, one of the first observations I made about this scene is that you know how much he loves her because he just
Yeah.
lives in her crazy for a minute. Like, he's just, every woman at some point has gotten that over emotional. I mean,
Yeah.
well, if you've ever been with a man who's kind of like more stoic, I'll say.
So
if
Mom
you've
bought me
ever,
coffee. Yes.
woohoo! If you've ever been with a stoic man and you are an emotional woman, you've had that moment where you are just, they do not understand you. You are crying over something. You are hysterical over something. You are worrying like it's the end of the world over something. And they're just standing there like, okay, honey, it's not like that. It's not that bad. It's okay. That is not going to happen. This is not the end of the world. Like, that's totally how I felt now. He's like, you are not going to die
Don't be
tomorrow.
calling me out like that.
Well, I'm calling me out. I could probably name 5 exact examples. I could probably, well, no, I ain't gonna call now.
Thank you.
Yeah, she's too spoiled.
Thanks for caffeinating me so I can live another day, to spin another yarn, to gallop into another tangent.
But I wouldn't call now because of the time it is here, but I could make one phone call and probably have somebody give you 2 instances. They'll be like, oh, yes, I could tell you exactly.
Stephen can probably give
like,
you 2 instances per day of me being overly dramatic and him being like, come on.
I'm going to give a Golden Girls reference that I know you've never seen, but it's going to be Sophia going,
some yesterday.
Sicily, 1994. and you'd get a moment where Patty's like getting hysterical over something and somebody has to calm her down.
And you know what? We've still got 15 points to get through. And I have just decided that everyone is just going to suffer a really long episode today because
it's the kiss. It's
the kiss. And you know what? This is my favorite romantic scene out of all of them. Yes, the carriage is pure passion and sets us all on fire. And the mirror
This isn't
scene,
my favorite kiss, though.
The mirror scene is beautiful.
Look at you ignoring me because you're just not going to agree. This is not my favorite kiss.
I love it it's my favorite first kiss ever.
Oh, first kiss of anything. Yes.
Like,
and Nicola and Luke talked about all these other famous kisses that they were
Ross
trying to emulate. Ross and Rachel and Jess and whatchamajig from New Girl.
Nick and Jess. That was it. That was the one.
So this one this is the first kiss of first kisses of anything.
To me, Nick and
it's
Jess.
Sweet. It's beautiful. Yeah. Well, Nick and Jess, like the best Nick and Jess kiss is not their first kiss. It's the getting back together kiss.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't.
And Ross and Rachel, the best first kiss is their first kiss, but they had been holding it back for so long that it was way more passionate. We got derailed again.
Like, honestly, today is just a day of pure chaos trying to record. So we have lost so many tangents, and that's probably what's also going to add to this episode being 10,000 bajillion years long, because I know we're talking about first kisses and all their magic, but let's go. I want to talk a little bit about the fact that the garden landscape and the whole vibe is nearly an exact replica of a really famous Psyche painting. Those who have listened to the first episode probably know all about my Eros and Psyche theories at this point. It's not even a theory, it's there. They've even said
it's a theme.
It's a theme. So they've recreated the scene to be very Eros and Psyche coded, which I love because it kind of plays into that whole star-crossed lovers thing for me, which I love.
Eros only comes to Psyche at night.
Well, and it's for me, I'm a hopeless romantic. I love books. I've got a book series in here somewhere, and I can't remember what it is at this moment, but it's one where over the centuries, she keeps respawning because they were both angels. They got sent out of heaven for falling in love with each other because you weren't allowed to love was a human emotion, and so she was fated to be reborn again and again and again and again, and he would find her in every single lifetime and he would love her in every single lifetime, only for her to die very soon after him finding her, and it would always happen randomly, but it would happen every single time for hundreds of years. But I kind of, Colin and Penelope for me is the kind of love that they would find each other again and again and again throughout the times.
Yes.
They are the kind of souls that are linked to each other. There are different kinds of love out there, but Penelope and Collins is one of my favorites, that they were best friends all along. They loved each other all along, and it just took themselves a while to distinguish the difference between best friend love and intimacy.
Yeah, because it was all meshed together, not just the friend thing, but how close Penelope was to Eloise, being part of the family. Like
that's why I love the whole Eros and Psyche thing, because it's that whole star-crossed lovers kind of theme, and it just plays into them being more than just husband and wife, more than just best friends. It is like a timeless love.
Yeah. And I think that it plays into how quickly Colin moves, because having seen her as a member of the family all this time, like Penelope's just always been there. She is a part of the family. We are family. She is my family. The moment.
Sorry, folks. We have had numerous interruptions today. My house is full of people.
We're going to have that list too. Interruption number, I think we're at 9 or 10 now, because technically my son interrupted while your family interrupted too. So I'm now up to 3 or 4 of my son.
I don't even know how many we're up to at this point, but it is chaos. I don't even know where we got up. Yeah, families. It's just,
they're just like, oh, it's like, this will only take a minute.
It's like Bridgerton household over here, where I can't hear myself think. I just need to get away to get to know myself, to hear my own thoughts.
Right.
I feel you, Francesca. I feel you.
She keeps telling them, Patty wants to go to bed. No, I'm good. Stephen knows better. Stephen knows better.
My husband 100% knows that you have as awful a sleep patterns as me. Penelope promises Colin that the kiss would not mean anything and that she would not hold him accountable to any society norms because of it. Colin is being somewhat jovial in his response until Penelope looks him in the face and holds his gaze. That is when he breaks his composure. She says the words that he cannot say no to, and this is a direct scene from the book. Please, Colin. When she says his name, he loses all composure. He's done.
Well, and here's my thought process of this scene from Colin's point of view, because okay, she says, can I ask you something? And the way he says, of course, isn't disembodied. It's not like in the book. Like in the book, it says he knows whatever she's going to ask is a bad idea, but he hears his voice saying, of course, anyway. His, of course,
you can have anything.
He's almost giddy. And I think he's almost giddy. He's controlling himself. But I think this is what he has been doing all of this for. He has wanted her to be brave enough to ask him, to reveal her feelings to him. He wants to get back to that good place he believes they were at the end of season 2, before she overheard his callous comment that he was making to protect her and him and their privacy, but she still got hurt by it. And he believed he had to do this like Herculean tasks to gain her love and affection back, because Colin he holds a grudge. We know this now from the second half. He holds a grudge, and he probably assumes everybody does. So he thinks he has to earn back her love, and he's hoping this is the moment that it happened. He's giddy. He wants her to say, like, when she says, would you kiss me? The way he goes, Penelope, like, and she cuts him off. But I think the way he says it, and I said this in my TikTok, it is not like, that's a bad idea. Penelope, like, he wants their first kiss to be with full understanding. So he was just going to bite the bullet right here and tell her he had feelings for her, but she cut him off and she went through her verbal diarrhea. Then he ends up sounding like an idiot with "you're not going to die" and all that stuff. So he doesn't even know how to get back to that moment. And yes, then she says, Colin, please, with the moonlight on her face in that dress, that shimmery dress. Her hair is cascading down her shoulder. She looked like his way of saving her in this moment, because Colin must save Penelope.
He has wanted her for so long that he cannot withhold it any longer, with her physically asking him, begging him, not in a pathetic way. But I love that moment of the book where, he says, I've never felt so needed by someone ever in my life, that it is like she will crumble if I do not
her
kiss
need for him is palpable in that moment. And I think that it's important because Colin is a very empathetic, very intuitive to feelings, and he feels that coming off of her. Like she needs him in a way he's never been needed by anyone. He's
and it's
always felt
him,
protective
not
of her.
anyone.
Yes.
Him.
Yes.
Not second brother,
And
not third brother, Polin.
yes, Colin Bridgerton. She says his name. She wants him, and that does him in because he has wanted her all this time. And I think in his this decision was to kiss her was totally like, this is how I tell her. So she's not going to let me get the words out. She's not going to give me a word in edgewise. That's directly from Man of Green Gables, Anne and Gilbert, for anyone who's seen the old 1980s version.
I'm not there yet. Don't ruin it.
Yeah.
I'm loving it.
I mean, just not letting anyone have a word in edgewise. He did not get a word in edgewise here. He decides he is going to tell her by showing her. And he gives her the most beautiful first kiss. And we know, because remember, all of the behind
No
the scenes.
spoilers alert at all. Jeez.
All of the behind the scenes showed this when they did their dance and he stopped and he runs his hand down her cheek. That was complete Luke Newton choice. And the reason I think it worked and the reason it stayed in is because for him, he was giving us as fans something to take back to this scene because we see it there and we see it here because he doesn't just grab her chin or cup, lift up her chin like in the book. He slides down her cheek. He's wanted to feel her skin. You can tell how much he wanted this by how he approached it. He is walking to her slowly and reverently.
But he's also he's doing it in such a slow and purposeful way to allow her
so she can change her mind
out, to allow her time. Oh, I can't do this, or oh, this makes me too nervous, or I don't want to go through with it. King of consent.
And it's you must think of the moment with Marina here when he was going to kiss her, because he did almost the same thing. And what actually scared him and what made him step back is the fact that he could see that she was expecting him to kiss her, that she wanted to kiss her, and his gut told him that this was not a good time, not a good thing. Don't do it. Like he wasn't getting that feeling. But it would
have been that mechanical,
yes. That it was obvious she wanted it, but he didn't. Like, I don't want to say obvious because he didn't feel anything. Like here with Penelope, he felt all the feeling. With Marina, he felt nothing. She wasn't giving off any kind of need, passion, feeling. She wanted it for very different reasons. So it wasn't the same feeling. And that is how he could stop, because there's so many things on the interwebs about how is it he could stop with Marina but not Penelope. That's it. Colin could feel the difference. He could feel that Penelope needed him just as much as he needed her, that she wanted him just as much as he wanted her, which is why he was thrown for a loop under the willow tree.
The difference is Colin approaches Marina. Marina's expecting it. Her body is not showing
She's expecting. She's not excited. Her body's
not showing any physical reaction. Whereas, I mean, I know that people can't see me on the camera unless we eventually upload these videos, but Penelope asks for it, and she sees in his eyes, she sees the moment that he makes the decision to do this. Even before he starts approaching her, she can see it in his eyes. She knows him so well that she can see exactly, and immediately her breath, and reacts. There are so many memes on the internet about this moment. Her boobs but her chest, it's just her chest, just her breathing in a corset. It's going to happen. Like it's that like almost anxiety induced breathing of anticipation of this moment.
And I'll tell you, her mindset as a girl who very much had feelings for someone for a long time, she was going, oh my God, he's going to do it. I didn't think he would do. Oh my God, he's going to do it. He's coming. Oh my God, he's going to do it. He's coming this way. He's coming this way. What do I do? What do I do? He's going to do it. Colin Burney is red alert, danger, Will Robinson. He's going to kiss me. Like, she's freaking out. She asked. She did not think he would answer. I honestly think and that's why she did the begging thing. I think that she needed it to mean nothing, but she could tell the way he approached it too. I think she could tell in that moment, like, this wasn't going to be just because she asked, and it freaked her out.
He then leans down and turns her head gently into the softest and briefest touching of the lips. And he pulls back an inch as they look into each other's eyes before their lips embrace again. And it's that testing the waters. This is the kiss that you've asked for. And now this is the real one. And now this is the kiss that I need to give to you.
Yeah, this is the one I want to give to you. The first one you asked for.
But I love that you just get that kind of, they had their first initial just touching of the lips. It wasn't a kiss. It was just a touching of the lips. And it's the moment that they get to look into each other's eyes and have vulnerability. And you know that sigh that you do when something finally, like something you've waited for so long, the anticipation, and it finally culminates into this moment, and you finally feel like even though you were breathless, that you can finally breathe, because like, oh, the absolute like elation of this moment, like as a viewer, makes me so giddy.
Well, and I think it's important too that in that moment when he pulls back,
they both
he's the one, everyone says like he's the one that goes back in, but I see it differently when I look at it. Like he approached her, she asked, and for Colin, he's the king of consent. So she asked, so he doesn't have to ask for consent, but he gives her the kiss she asked for. He pulls back, they both look at each other and they meet together. They meet in the middle. And the same thing happens in the carriage. It's a thing when he approaches all the way to the last second in the carriage and then they meet together. Like there's always that moment of they are equals.
He allows her to meet him that last little bit to make sure it's something that she wants. I will come 80% of the way. You just have to meet me the 20% so I know that this is something that you want to go ahead with.
Yeah. So that first kiss was what was asked for. Everything after that was both of them wanting it. And that is why he was like, we're married now. Like the way he acted, he was like, because he was thrown for a loop. He was thrown for a loop because of I believe this was his sexual awakening. This is where he viewed her as truly sexual being, that there's no way he could think of her as he had thought of her up to this point.
I think he knew he loved her. And then there's a whole different thing of being in love with someone, where
being sexually attracted to them in a way
it's not just that. It's the difference between, like, I think he, like, Anthony loved Sienna in a way. I think Colin loved Marina in a way, but there is a completely different kind of love, that all-encompassing love. And I think this is that moment where he realizes, I love her to the point that I cannot give this girl up. I cannot do what's best for her in the way of letting like other suitors take her away from me. And for a moment he thinks, okay, this is it. This is our chance to be together. I'm going all in. This is our time.
Well, that's my point. Like when it became physical, because usually in a friends to lovers, you have a physical catalyst that takes them over that line, right? From friends to lovers. And this is that line in the friends to lovers trope. This is his sexual awakening, where he's seeing her as a goddess, as that siren, as somebody that tempts him. He cannot. And it is for her too, because she's always loved Colin Bridgerton. But the way she looks at him after this kiss is different. She puts her own life in danger to just stare at him pulling on a rope. Like it changes for the both of them, and they realize each other are grown-ups, and they're getting feelings that only touching of lips and things can give you. They're both thrown for a loop in this moment. Like,
the way that I've written it is in my notes is, this is not a deeply repressed, sexually charged kiss. This is a kiss between two people who are finally letting their bodies express openly without withholding from each other, because they are always withholding. They're always editing their truth. They're always working within the bounds of society. And this is a moment where they just are truly open with each other. And I love when their lips meet again, that Penelope lets out that little moan of just elation, and it's such a moment. I love how heavy, like how anxiety, like it's not really anxiety, but how excited she is, how heavy she's breathing, how she's about to lose control. Like I think she is having almost like an out of body experience. Like she is just so like, oh my God, he's gonna do it. And the minute their lips touch, she calms. She's quiet. And then when her mind is never quiet. And when they go finally, and his isn't either. And you feel like in that moment of the kiss, neither one of them are thinking of anything. Like they're in their little space. They're in their little Polin space, just them. And they don't want to break it, because when they're done, they leave their foreheads are touching. They're in that moment together. Having that little moment, a little moment of afterglow kind of thing. But while they're kissing, he, who was so calm, because ADHD people are very calm in a crisis. He was calm in her crisis,
And then as he's kissing her, he's like everything that's from the book that went through Colin's head about, oh my gosh, he's just wanting her. It's building for him. Luke Newton did that. He built. She calmed with that kiss because she was just reveling in it and she was trying to remember every detail. So she had to focus on it. He's focusing on it because he is just trying, he is giving her a dissertation of all the ways he loves her with his lips. And he's getting more excited and more fervent and more like,
Well,
he's just trying to tell her everything.
That in the dream sequence the next morning, but we'll get on to that.
I know. That's totally another episode.
I love that. I love that they had the same moment from the book where they pull away from, they don't pull away from each other. Their lips leave each other and instead they replace with the minds. And it's because it's not just their hearts that are attached, it's their minds, and they cannot entirely remove the intimacy from the moment. So they settle for that simple intimacy of connecting their minds together. And it just shows. And I think for Colin in that moment, he's thinking,
look at me.
Look how we fit together. This moment is perfect. And she's thinking, I need to hold on to this moment. I need to remember this moment because this is the moment that I get to live the rest of my life. This little piece of happiness is the one piece of happiness that I'm going to hold for the rest of my life of loveless life. This is the one piece that's going to power the rest of my life, her core memory. And Colin doesn't understand that that's what she's feeling in that moment, that yes, she felt everything that he did in that moment, but she thinks
she
that
was
he
saying goodbye and he was saying hello.
And he doesn't understand. He cannot comprehend the absolute hell that she has been through her whole entire life, to the fact that he doesn't understand that she doesn't feel what he is feeling in the way that she doesn't understand that he is feeling that too, that two people cannot kiss, they cannot meet in that intimate a way and it not be more than just a kiss.
Well, and that's because he's had other ones. He's had other ones.
I think it's because he's been raised with love. He knows what love is. He knows what it looks like. He knows what it feels. He doesn't in the book, granted, but he's been raised with love his whole life. He's been raised with acceptance and all those things. She has been raised in a complete opposite, where she doesn't think anything good is ever going to happen to her. So she doesn't understand that he loves her.
But I also think that what plays into this too is he knows this is different and he knows they have a connection and he knows that they both love each other because of that kiss. And it's because he's kissed other people. He's had other experiences, so he can see the difference. This is her only experience, and she's read books. What kind of books? Books about love. So she thinks all are like, she doesn't know the difference. And she honestly can still put that he did this for her because she asked out of pity. And she's embarrassed because she thinks all kisses are like this because these are the kisses she's read about. She got the kiss she's read about.
Yeah. And then we get the moment that I think that Colin is just basking in this moment, biding his time. Let's just finish this beautiful moment together. And then I'm going to ask you to marry you. And then she just,
she bolts.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And I'm out.
Because I mean, and honestly, like she is so down on herself and her inner monologue is so negative that she is not taking in all of the stimuli that should tell her that this man wants her.
Mind, body, and soul.
His hand is still on her face, still holding, still a connection. His forehead is leaning on hers, still a connection. He has not moved away from her in the least. He has to be. This is the closest he's gotten to be to her. I mean, and he's a hoverer.
This is the closest
he is in her personal space
he's ever had.
That he has been in her personal space their whole lives. The first time we see them together at a ball, he is hovering over her, super close. The Trowbridge ball
has gravitated towards her his whole life, and he just didn't even acknowledge his need to be so close to her.
Well, and I think, my school of thought is he knew, he just didn't believe he could have. So he was willing to move on and take, just like in this moment. And I think that this is the mirror we get, because what they were trying to do is mirror seasons 1 and season 2 for Colin. Colin had to go through all the same things that Penelope went through so that he could deserve her for the fans. There's a lot of fans that didn't believe he deserved her. So they just mirrored it. Every single thing he goes through with her, she went through with him. When she walks away, basically from the willow tree, she's telling him, that meant nothing to me. We're just friends. That's really the just friends moment, not the carriage. The carriage was minuscule. This was his Danbury House soiree. You're just a friend. you're different, you don't count moment. And it broke his heart. He had to go through all that same stuff. He had to watch her be with other people, almost marry someone else, because that is what she watched him do with Marina. So everything, now that we're having Colin's point of view, like I was saying in the beginning, it's no longer Penelope's point of view. We had to watch he had everything happen to him that Penelope went through, having unrequited love for him, or believed unrequited love. That so he had to have all those same steps. For whatever reason, the writers decided he had to go through all of the same stuff she did, so that they could be on the same page finally. When it allows them to get to 8 episodes, but they almost had too much. Like, they didn't have to give him every experience she went through. Come on now. But yeah, they gave him every single moment where it looks like she might have feelings for him, but then she acts like she doesn't. All of that stuff. Everything Penn went through in season 1 and season 2, Colin had to go through. And in this moment, her running off was very much like end of season 1. She's about to tell him she loves him, and he cuts her off and he tells her he's leaving. So that's the moment of, I'm ready. He's ready to tell her everything. And she's like, bye, I'm out. I'm going to Greece. You know what I mean? Like, it's basically that scene. So that's the experience he's having in that moment. And she stayed holed up for another couple of days, almost a week before she comes out of hiding. So
yeah, for anyone who struggles to keep up with our tangents, I'm so sorry. Our brains are
and we will more than likely repeat it at some point.
Yeah, well, I'm keeping much more meticulous notes now to try and keep on top of what we've already discussed in each pod, so I can go back and read the notes rather than having to listen to a 2-hour episode, which this is going to end up being. So I'm going to cut it off here so I don't have more editing to do. For today, gentle listeners, we will leave it there and continue on next week's episode. If you have anything in particular you would like us to cover, or any Bridgerton knowledge you would like to share, please head to our Facebook page, The Ladies Bridgerton. And if you are enjoying our podcast, please remember to click the follow on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you are listening. Once again, thank you for listening to the musings of 2 mad women. Yours truly, Tash the Kiwi.
And Lady Patty.